Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. I'm working on my lumber facility, and what I want to do is create a kind of like a fence perimeter, but where the rails come into the facility, I want to create a swinging gate. So before I get too far into it, I just want to make sure that I document what I'm doing in case anybody's interested in doing this. And just so you know, this is not my idea. I got this idea from Thomas Kleminski, who's got an awesome switch and layout. And he's got his lumber facility set up the same way. In my opinion, his fence looks better than mine, but this is what I'm going with because I'm not sure what fence he used, and also it's too late now because I already got this. So I did this on my N scale layout and it came out fine with the same type of etched kind of fencing, and I liked how it came out, so I'm just going to go with that. So yeah, like I said, before I get too far into it, I'm just going to show you what I'm doing, because once I get into the next few steps, I'm not going to be able to take this apart to show you. So the first thing I did, obviously, is I went out and got my fencing. The name of the company that I'm using is Alchem Scale Models, and the owner of this company was very good, communicated right away, and these got to me pretty quickly. So I got a bunch of them, and the idea is that I'm going to wrap most of the facility. So this is going to go kind of like this, one over here, and then it's going to keep going until you get to this industrial building here. So it's going to go kind of like that, and then on this side, this will continue around the perimeter, and then just duck under there, and that's going to be like trees and stuff like there. So I'll have some kind of building there for the lumber, and then lumber just all over the grounds here. But anyways, going back to the gate, what I've done so far is I took my doorway, which is actually a 6-panel doorway. It looks like this originally, this bottom one here. And these are the kind of gates that slide open, I think, but I couldn't do that. And I didn't want to use this one here because this is supposed to be the one that opens like one way and then the other way, like the two mechanism type door. And I don't think I have the patience to do two of what I'm doing because it's so involved. So I'm going with one opening gate, and the way it's going to work is like this. It's just going to open this way, and that'll be it, and then just close. Now, what I did to get this far is that I basically took some piano wire, and I forget what size it is, but it's not too thick. It's a little piece here. It's about that thick, which blends in nicely with the what would be the posts of the fence. And maybe I'll post the size on the video before I actually upload this thing. And I just used crazy glue, quite a bit of it, just so that it would really stick there. And I stuck the post to the fence, as you can see there. Then what I did is I created like a guide. So first I drilled a hole. It was, just a little bigger than the pin that I just showed you. And then I used this aluminum tubing, and it's 1.57 millimeters, number 8100. And this is just big enough to fit the piano wire that I just showed you. So it fits in there nice and snug, and this way the gate doesn't move back and forth and slouch, or whatever you call it, like droop, that's the word. So now that I have that in place, well, what I did is I took it just a little piece to make it through the benchwork. I put a little crazy glue around it so that when I put it in, it doesn't go all the way in. I let that dry, and then I just inserted the pin, which is about that big under the, it's going through the benchwork. So what's under the benchwork is just about that much of the pin. But then here's where it gets tricky. You have to get these Lego gear type pieces. And the most important part is, this is from my old layout, that's why I have it all rigged up like this. But this box is the gearbox that makes, it's like a reducer. So you spin this spiral gear here, and then you have I'll show you with this one. So you spin the spiral gear, and that spins the other gear very slowly, which is what you want. You don't want this thing to be spinning super fast. Now, for some weird reason, this particular one is a little sticky. It's not sliding as nicely as the other one, but it still works well enough. I'm going to see why that's being so sticky, but this is what needs to go up into the fencing, into that post. So the post is going to come down and connect to this rod here. But before I get to that, so what I did to get this figured out is, I looked under my benchwork, and all I have is basically one piece of wood that goes like this, part of the frame. So if you can imagine the benchwork coming down like this. So all I have is that one piece to attach to. So I took an extra piece of wood that was, that would fit in there nicely, and that was thick enough to mount this thing. I drilled a hole in the plastic, so you can see there, and then put in a tiny screw, kind of like this, but shorter. This is 3/4. I put a 1/2-inch screw in there. I think these are number 4 wood screws, and that's how I attach the plastic to there. Just make sure you drill a little bigger than the screw head, because you have to make sure that the screw head is flush, as you can see there. Otherwise, this gear is going to rub up against the head. So once I got that, then I put the mechanism in. You just pop this gear in, you push the rod through, it holds it in place. Same thing here, you slide the gear in, and this rod holds it in place. So these things just come out, they just slide through. So once you slide them out, the gear just falls out. So it's really easy to use. Pop it back in. So what I was going to do originally was that I was going to use the same method that I used on my N scale layout. But the difference is that on my N scale layout, I had this mechanism on the main level, meaning like where I had a lot of space underneath. But here, since it's going on the second level, it's very hard to get in there and work. So I want to make sure that if I ever need to take this out for whatever reason, that it's detachable. So on my other N scale layout, I had the pin going into just a little hole on top of this thing that I drilled with my little micro drill here, my hand drill. So I just made a hole, and then I just pushed the pin in, attached the whole mechanism to the underneath of the benchwork. And that's how it worked. But like I said, it was a lot simpler to get under there and see everything. But over here, it's a little bit more challenging. So what I did is I still made a hole on this little rod, but it was a second rod that I had from the other one, from this guy. As you can see, it's not here. So I took the rod out, I made a hole, I pushed it into the pin that's underneath, and I crazy glued that in place. So now, basically, the rod is coming down. The rod is coming down. It's got this piece on it, kind of like this, and it's attached permanently. But what's gonna hold it together is that I used one of the spirals that I had. I had an extra one like this, and I glued that into that little piece of plastic that's under the pin. So if you can imagine this being the plastic under the pin, I basically just took this, which fits a little bit loose. See how that slides? But it still grabs because it's got that kind of that like X type grip on it. But it's loose enough so that it just kind of slides in there, and I don't have to force. If I ever want to take it out, I don't have to force it out. So what I did is I glued this to that pin only halfway, so that then I can use it as a receiver for this thing when I go in. So if I ever need to take it out, all I got to do is unscrew the one screw that's holding this together, possibly two if I need it, and then it'll just slide out. So, you know, it's if I need to take that out, that's going to be a little more problematic, but it's just a matter of being able to change out the mechanism if it ever breaks or whatever, or if I need to make adjustments. So the goal is to get this up there, you know, so that it makes contact via the spiral, as so. And then what I'm going to do, and I'll have to put the camera down while I do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this this is just an evergreen styrene pipe that fits the rod here, the longer rod. So I'm going to slide that in there. That's going to be the driving, kind of like the axle. That's going to drive that mechanism. And then that's going to stick out of the fascia here. And then I'm going to have a crank that you can, you know, spin so that it spins this, which then spins that, which then spins the gate, and it'll open up. So what I need to do right now is test fit this thing. But before I do that, I want to make sure that this is in place. So the way I'm going to keep this in place is by drilling a small hole with my little drill again, or two. I might go like 1, 2. And then I'm going to stick more of that piano wire through. But it's going to go through, and then I'm going to bend it on both ends so that it stays there. So it acts as like a cotter pin in there. And then this way when you spin it, it doesn't hit the piece of wood. So it'll kind of be like this, but then I'll bend it so it'll look like that after it's bent. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll be back. All right, so I have this installed now. Here's the pin that I just installed. And like I said, what I did was I took my micro drill and went right through the PVC pipe, but also through the black rod that's inside there. And once I put it in, I just kind of bent it here so that it wouldn't fall out, but it's pretty tight on there. I tried to use a drill bit that was a little too small for that, so that I'd have to force it in, but now it's, you know, it's really in there. And then obviously when I turn this rod now, what happens is the mechanism follows through. So now, you know, either way you turn it, it'll turn that gear, which then turns the rod, which then will turn the spiral that's attached to this, which is the connecting point, which will then connect to the rod that's on top and the gate and so on and so forth. So now I kind of test fitted it up in the Benchwork. So now I have to get the alignment of the rod to see where it actually lands on the fascia. And then once I do that, I'll be able to drill a hole through the fascia. And this way it comes through, and then attach the mechanism that I'm going to use to control it from the fascia. So I'll be back for that. All right, so here we are under the Benchwork. You can see the mechanism sits right there. And you can see where the connecting spiral is. Let's see if I can get it more here. Oh, there it goes. So you see it right there. That's where the two spirals are connected. Like I said, the top one is glued halfway, but the bottom one slides out. And then over here, you have the connection for the rod that's eventually going to be what I control. So that rod goes all the way out to the fascia. So what I did is I marked it right there, just so I knew where it was making contact. Sorry, right there. And then I just went up to where I wanted the height to be and drilled a hole. Now, there is a piece of wood here, which I was a little bit worried about because, you know, this thing is not going to be perfectly straight, so I didn't want it to bind. But I think it might be a good thing because it'll reinforce the alignment. And if anything, I can just drill the back a little bigger and leave this small. That hole is the same size as that tube, so it should fit in there nice and snug. But before I do that, what I want to do, oh, and by the way, I had to be careful not to go too high because I have the spline here, and I didn't want it to go, you know, into the spline. And it is going to have a little bit of a bend probably, but, you know, not enough to really get in the way. But also what I want to do is put the rod on top of these wires. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I was a little preoccupied because I thought, oh man, I just got that pin in there and I got to take the pin out and do it that way. But there's an easier way to do it. There's one of these red stoppers in the back here also. So I'm going to take that out. This little guy. And that should allow me to pull the whole mechanism out. Like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed this through here and into the Benchwork. And we'll see if it's too tight. Yeah, the hole is a little too small, so I'm going to go ahead and make that slightly larger. I'll be back. All right, so I was able to go slightly bigger, and it actually worked out better anyway, because now it's exact. And the wood in the back is creating like a stabilizer for it anyway. So now I just got to reattach this mechanism. So I'm going to just pull it forward here and then just go back in. And it feels a little bit tight, but let's see if it will work once I get the crank up. So that'll slide into the spiral gear there, comes through. And then this is just a stopper. It's not really doing much, but it's enough to keep it kind of in place there. So now when I turn it, I'll just focus here. When I turn it from the fascia, you can see that it's turning the mechanism, which then should turn the gate. So let's see. Yep, there it goes. And honestly, there's not too much friction here with this, so oh, there it goes. So now the next step is to cut this to size and then add the crank that I'm going to make so that it could just be, you know, a spinning kind of motion rather than twisting. So it'll be smoother as I open it. So I'll be back for that. Sorry, I forgot to mention that the gate is sitting a little high right now, and that's kind of like what I wanted to be able to control. So now what I do to bring that down is I basically just slide the main rod down and hopefully not disconnect the top part. And I'm just watching it from the top, and I can, oh, this is really nice. I can really fine tune it. Look at this. Like very carefully fine tune that right there. And now it's much better. And it still doesn't touch the rail. So that works. All right, so I made a little more progress here. This is the day after. And what I did is I just basically took the fencing that's going to go around the perimeter of this, not all of it, but a lot of it, and I added the posts. I made the posts out of more piano wire. Just cut a bunch of little segments like this, and I actually had to shorten them a little bit because I didn't want to go too deep into the plaster there, but I did drill the little holes, and you know, with the exception of a few of them, they're all pretty much in place. I also went ahead and made these grass mats myself. I just took some wax paper, threw some Mod Podge down, and then hit it with a static grass, a lot of it, and a few of the little things, like those little turf balls there. I did it all throughout the back here. So now what's happening is that it's blending in with the backdrop picture. You can barely tell where the connection is when you look at it from this angle. So that's photo, and that's, you know, the grass that I made. So the only thing is that this connection here is lifted a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put glue all around here, and then hit it with more static grass. So it'll just cover all that. But I do want to leave some. I'm gonna make this like spotty, where there's like sections of grass, and then I want to leave some spots where there's nothing, just to make it look less exact. And I ran it back there also. This tree fell to blend in with that stuff. It looks pretty good, but obviously I gotta just close that gap a little more. Probably put something under the grass to lift it a little bit, and then I gotta figure out how I'm gonna blend that. I mean, I was looking to do something like that, and then just taper it down, but I'm gonna probably paint the back like a brownish color to kind of like mimic what's going on in the picture there. But here's the most important part. Now that the gate is working, you know, I cut this little pole here, so now it's opening up, you know, manually, and all I got to do is just add the crank. The next thing that I wanted to do is create some kind of control panel here, like a small, low-profile control panel with the crank, like this, and then a servo wheel like this coming through here. And what that's going to do is it's going to act as the switch for this industry spur right there. And then I also want to have like either a key, where you gotta like put a key in to turn the power on for this thing, or some kind of switch to turn it on and off, for two reasons. Number one, I think it's kind of cool when you have to, you know, it's like an industry where you have a key, but also because the servo that I'm using for this, you know, the power is always on. So I don't like to keep the servo running like that, because you could eventually burn it out. So rather than have to unplug it every time I'm not using it, I just, you know, I could cut the wire here and put an on-off switch here, or a key, like I said. And then I'm gonna put a little box over it where like it pops open. It's like a little latch. And then you'll see, like, you know, the little map here of the spur with the main line. So it's basically gonna take up this general area here, and it'll describe what it is, you know, whatever the name of the company is and how the tracks are laid out. But let me show you how I did the servo. So the servos I'm using are these basic 9G servos you can get for like, just, you know, a few bucks on eBay. And they're all the same. You know, they come with this little blade, or actually they come with a few of these, but I like to just use a standard one. And then the wire that comes with it has this little clip on it, which is a typical servo, you know, connector. And basically you have a negative, a positive, and then the yellow is a signal. That's what tells it to go one way or the other. So as soon as you keep those things the same, you're good to go. The other thing are these servo testers, which are like, I think I got them for like 99 cents, or like super cheap. Well, maybe not now, because things are very different now, but when I got them, you know, about 3 years ago, they were very cheap. And this is basically what controls the speed and the direction of the servo. This is the power, and it goes to 5-volt source. So you can see here it says from 4.8 to 6 volts. So I'm running 5 volts, which, you know, is fine. And then the other side has the connector that I just showed you for the servo right there. So one's positive, one is negative. I forget which one. I think the red is positive, brown is negative, and then the yellow on top, or orange, is your signal. Now the wire that comes with the servos they're not too long. They're basically just that. So I got some extenders. You don't have to do this. I mean, it's not you can just do it with like regular wire, but this is easy. It's just plug and play. It's got a female and then a male. So you just basically keep adding them until you get the desired length. So I extended the wire up to the servo right there. And then the way I mounted the servo is with basically a small U-channel type piece of aluminum. You just buy this at Home Depot, like in very long sections, and then just cut them with your, with your saw. You got to be careful because it does spit out a lot of metal particles. So do it outside or something, and just be careful with your fingers. Or you can do it with a handsaw. It's actually easy to cut. It's not that bad. And then I just put 2 holes on it, and then I use little screws, little number 4s, or even number 6s. Actually number 4s, but with a 3/4 length instead of a 1/2 inch, like this. So remember, I'm dealing with homosaw, so I wanted to, really dig in there so it stays in place. But that's not going anywhere. And then what you see here is the piano wire coming down from the turnout. And the way I make those is basically I just take a longish piece of wire. I make like a, let's see if I can draw this for you. The shape that I make is kind of like this. So here's your wire. At the top, what I do is I make a shape that looks like this. Kind of like an L with a little, like almost like a 7. This goes into the actual throw bar, and this goes through the spline. So the spline would be, like this, and it goes under the layout. And what you see down here is what you see there, right there. And then basically what I do is I bend it. Once it gets past the layout, I bend this section. So I just bend this like that. And then when it gets to the servo, I give it a little bit of a lip. When it gets to the servo, I bend it down. So the servo is actually sitting here, right? Well, I guess the little wheel thing would be here, and then the servo would be more like this. Whatever, you get the point. And this is what pushes the bar back and forth. But the other thing I like to do is get a little bit of like a kick up here like this, because that kind of pushes this down so it doesn't pop up while you're messing with this. Now you can get really fancy and like put like a nice smooth piece of plastic here or something to like just let it slide there. I don't think it makes a difference. Not a major one anyway. So let me show you the top. Here's the top. So you can see there's the hook. And I basically just drill down. What I do add in there is a piece of pipe. The same piping that I used for the gate, that aluminum tubing. And it could be anything, as long as you have some kind of rigid, piece there so that it holds it in place. And then that little hook goes into your throw bar. So now when you turn the servo, this is what you get. And so, sorry, I had a short there. So once again, when you turn the servo, that spins the bar and pushes it to one side and the other. Now what I like about that is that, when I have the spring in there, I'm probably going to pop it out. So that's why you see it like kind of popping to one side. But I can literally control it so it's really slow without the spring. So yeah, so you can see, if I didn't have a spring in there, it would be running much slower than that. So I'm probably going to pop the spring out. But the idea is that, if you had a hand throw there, it wouldn't be smooth anyway. It would be kind of choppy by the time you get that back saver up to a vertical position and then bring it down and then kick it down with your foot. It would be a choppy situation anyway. So, but at least that's a lot easier to do than putting a tortoise machine down there. Another tortoise machine in there, and then it's too aggressive in my opinion for what I'm doing here. Let me just show you what this looks like underneath. So you can see that bar gets kicked from one side to the next, and that's how you get the action to happen. And obviously I use the last hole on the white bracket here because I want a lot of swing on it, so that it actually pushes the blades of the point all the way to the other side. And, you know, you have to play with that a little bit until you get the clearance and until you get the right angle and all that stuff. But once you get it, it's fine. Right there. So now I feel like, you know, you can run this industry when somebody is here at a session. They can just come right here and say, okay, so this is the lumber industry, and you control everything: the gate, the switch for the turnout, and then, like I said, some kind of on-off switch. And then you do all your switching, and then once you're done, you click it off, throw the cover back in, and it'll, like I said, it'll be a little, it's basically the size of the fascia here, so that it's not hanging down too far. It doesn't get in the way down there. It is, the space is limited. I wish it was a little more, but I don't want to creep down into this level too much. So that's basically it. That's all I'm going to do as far as the mechanism goes. The next video I'm going to shoot will be a little later once I make more progress here, but it'll be with the panel in place and, you know, everything running. It'll look a lot neater, so you won't have all this tape and all this stuff hanging there like that. But I got to figure out the crank and little things like that. So until then, we'll just use this. All right, I'll see you in part 2.